In November 1348, a merchant rushes through Cheapside. His leather boots splash through puddles of waste that fill London's narrow streets. Smoke rises from 1,000 cooking fires behind wooden houses that are so close together that their upper floors almost touch. The bells of the church ring for morning prayer.
Fresh cod, straight from the Thames. Herring, herring.
At Billingsgate, fishmongers yell about their goods, while their masters unlock wooden shutters. Apprentices sweep the sidewalks. In a city with 70,000 people, it's a normal day, crowded, dirty, and full of life. The merchant doesn't see the ship docked at the Thames. Its crew is missing, and its cargo is still on board. He doesn't see the rats running down the mooring ropes. Their fleas are carrying something that will turn this busy city into a graveyard. Welcome to Arthur's Living History. Have you ever thought about what happened in medieval London when half of the people disappeared in less than 2 years? The streets fell silent, and survival became the only thing that was certain. Allow me to explain. It is the year 1348, and London is at the height of its wealth during the Middle Ages. The city is spread out within old Roman walls, and the streets are so narrow that only 2 people can pass through at a time. Timber buildings are 3 or 4 stories tall, and their upper floors stick out to make the most of the space. This makes the streets below always seem like dusk. This square mile is home to between 70 and 100,000 people, which is more than any other city in England. The sanitation systems of the time were not built to handle this many people.
Fine wool, best price in London. Out of the way, hot bread here.
These narrow passages are full of life.
The freshest loaf, mistress, still warm from the oven.
Dozens of bakeries make fresh loaves of bread on Bread Street. The sound of cows mooing fills Milk Street. These cows are kept for milking every day. Outside the walls of Smithfield, there are livestock markets where people can buy and sell cows, pigs, and sheep. The Thames is a road, a sewer, and a source of water all at the same time. Fishermen cast nets, tanners dump their toxic chemicals, and kids play in the shallows, even though their mothers tell them not to. The lack of proper sanitation is what makes London so open to what's coming. People in medieval London threw chamber pots out of their upper windows and into the street, sometimes with a shout of warning and other times without. Cesspits dug under homes often overflow, leaking through brick walls into the basements of nearby homes. Animals roam the streets freely, leaving their droppings to mix with fish guts, rotting vegetables, and the mud that builds up all the time from the rain in the fall. The ground itself turns into a thick paste of trash, organic waste, and dirt.
Write this down. Item. Excessive dung in the public way near Ludgate. See to it.
Officials are trying to keep things in order. Rakers are men who are paid to shovel trash. They work at night to clear the worst piles and take the trash to designated dumps outside the walls or to the banks of the Thames.
You scullion, defiling the King's Highway with your
Sergeants
ordure.
walk the streets and give tickets to people who break sanitation laws. But London is a mess because 100,000 people make waste every day. Animals make it worse. And people don't know how to stay clean or how diseases spread. The smell alone would be too much for any modern visitor. It was a constant miasma of rotting things, human waste, butchered meat, and unwashed people. the state of housing makes things worse. Most of the poor live in single-story huts made of wattle and daub, which are woven branches covered in mud and dung and thatched with straw. Rushes cover the dirt floors and are changed once a year, which makes them great places for rats, fleas and lice to live. Families sleep in single rooms with no windows, just holes in the walls that let in rain and cold. Rich people live in stone houses with glazed windows, wooden floors, and even old-fashioned fireplaces that let smoke out through the walls, but they share the same streets, air, and city as everyone else. In June 1348, ships from Gascony docked in Weymouth, Dorset, with wine, wool, and something that couldn't be seen: rats carrying Yersinia pestis, the bacterium that causes bubonic plague. The disease reaches Bristol by the fall. People who travel east along roads toward London carry it.
Please, he is burning.
The first cases show up in the capital by the end of October or the beginning of November. It starts with rumours: a family in Suffolk gets sick and a merchant near the docks suddenly gets a fever. The signs are clear and very scary. People who are hurt get really high fevers and feel like their bodies are on fire. Within a few hours, violent shaking starts, and then you can't stop throwing up. The body loses control of its muscles, and the limbs jerk around in spasms. Then there are the buboes, which are swollen lymph nodes in the groin and armpits that grow to the size of eggs or apples and fill with pus.
There is no hope. The darkness spreads.
They turn black as they grow.
God have mercy on his soul, physician.
Medieval doctors don't know why.
The pattern was undeniable. Once a family was struck,
They see that touching the sick person spreads the disease. They see that people who care for the sick often die themselves within days. They see black bruises spreading under the skin, which are the dark spots that give the disease its name, the Black Death. But they don't know what they're seeing. Their knowledge of medicine, which is based on old Greek ideas about humours and miasma, doesn't give them any answers, treatments, or hope.
Fresh bread! Get your bread here! They say it spreads by air!
The speed is what makes it so scary. A person who is healthy at breakfast could get a fever by noon, buboes by evening, and be dead by the next morning. Some die within 3 days. Some people stay in pain for a week before they die. The pneumonic form, which infects the lungs, is even more deadly because it spreads through coughing and kills almost everyone it touches. Septicemic plague spreads through the blood so quickly that people die before they even get buboes.
Get your hands off my goods! We must flee!
London is in a state of panic by December 13th, 1448. The plague doesn't just affect poor areas anymore. It strikes everywhere, killing rich and poor, clergy and merchants, nobles and beggars alike. Families go missing overnight. There are empty houses with crosses on the doors to keep people away. Parents leave sick kids behind because they are scared. Kids run away from homes where their parents are sick. The ties that hold families, neighborhoods, and society together start to break down. People who are desperate for divine help fill churches. Priests hear countless last confessions and give last rites to hundreds of people every day. The clergy pay a terrible price for their devotion. They get the plague at an alarming rate because they are always around sick people and touch them. Some estimates say that almost half of England's priests die in the first year. One by one, villages lose their priest, leaving people without spiritual support when they need it most. Doctors run away. People who stay try everything: bleeding patients to balance their humours, burning herbs to clean the air, and lancing buboes to get rid of the infection. Nothing works. Some doctors tell their patients to carry posies of flowers to keep bad air away. This is where the phrase "ring around the rosy" comes from. Others say to stay away from night air, bathe in vinegar, or drink treacle mixed with crushed emeralds.
This cordial shall balance your humours, ensure rest and warmth.
Rich people can pay for these useless treatments. The poor just have to deal with their pain and hope. By the spring of 1349, London becomes a nightmare. The living can't bury the dead fast enough. Parish graveyards fill up in just a few weeks. Bodies pile up in churchyards, waiting for a burial that never comes quickly enough. The Bishop of London blesses emergency burial sites, which are huge holes dug at East Smithfield, where hundreds of victims are buried in mass graves. When there is cloth available, workers wrap bodies in simple shrouds. When there isn't, they just stack them in the pits without ceremony. There are just too many people dying too quickly for regular funerals. The streets are getting quieter and quieter. Markets that used to be full are now only half full. The owners of the stores are either dead or have fled, and the stores are still closed. Apprentices disappear, leaving masters with no one to help them. Cattle walk around empty villages outside the city without anyone watching them. There is no one left to harvest the crops, so they rot in the fields. The bells, markets, and constant activity that were part of everyday life in the Middle Ages fade into ghostly echoes.
Make way! Move your cart!
Keep the line moving, sir. No stopping at the gate.
People who can afford to run away do. Rich people go to country estates, hoping that being alone in the country will keep them safe.
The air smells cleaner already.
King Edward III leaves London to go to the country. But the plague comes next. It moves along roads, hops from village to town, and chases refugees wherever they go. And those trying to escape face another horror. Villages close their gates to Londoners, forcing refugees to live in fields where they have to steal food and drink dirty water to stay alive. Many die not from the plague, but from hunger and exposure, leaving their bodies on the sides of roads. People who are still in London have to make impossible choices. Do you take care of sick family members, even though you know it will probably make you sick? Do you leave them behind to save yourself?
Have mercy, neighbour! Let us in!
Do you help your neighbours, or do you lock your door and hope the disease doesn't get to you?
Ho there, boy! Return to the shop this instant.
The rules of society fall apart when people have to survive. People take things from houses that aren't being used, In warehouses, goods sit unclaimed. When there's nothing to buy and no one to sell, money doesn't mean anything. Here's a detail that shows how strange and scary it is. By the summer of 1349, London had lost between 30 and 40,000 people, which is about half of its population. Whole neighborhoods are empty. The streets that used to be full of voices are now quiet, except for the sound of doors creaking in the wind. At night, the living stay in their homes, listening to the sounds of carts carrying the dead to burial pits and the groans of the sick coming from nearby houses. The normal noise of the city is replaced by an eerie silence, broken only by suffering. The plague doesn't care what class you are in. It hits the poor the hardest. Princess Joan, the daughter of King Edward, dies in Bordeaux on September 13th, 1448, while on her way to her wedding. But the small, dirty conditions of bad housing are perfect for rats and fleas to spread. Single-room hovels where whole families sleep together, and rats make nests in thatched roofs and burrow under dirt floors, become charnel houses. Stone houses with more money, more stories, and fewer rats have lower infection rates, but no one is really safe. Some people are very religious about the disaster. Flagellants are groups of men who whip themselves in public because they think the plague is God's punishment for human sin, and they want to make God happy by hurting themselves.
The sickness is from them. They must leave.
Some people blame others. In Europe, Jewish communities are being brutally persecuted because they are thought to have poisoned wells to spread the plague. People in England are less likely to hate each other than people on the continent, but the need to find someone to blame and explain the unexplainable leads to terrible acts. The effect on the economy is almost as bad as the effect on the population. There aren't enough workers because half of them are gone. There aren't enough people to do all the work that needs to be done, like ploughing fields, shearing sheep, building houses, and making goods. People who live through it suddenly become popular. Peasants who used to work for set wages now ask for better pay. Lords who used to have more workers than they needed now have to fight for them. The strict feudal system is starting to break down because it wasn't built to handle this kind of stress. Prices for food go up at first, but then they drop for some reason. Grain rots in granaries when there aren't people to eat it or workers to bring it to market. Animals roam around without being claimed. People don't pick apples in orchards. The survivors have too much food, too much money, and an economy that has been ruined by a huge loss of people. Some peasants end up owning land that their dead neighbors left behind. Some people find out they can ask for wages that their grandfathers would have thought were impossible. The first wave starts to die down by the fall of 1349. The disease is still killing people, but the number of deaths each day is going down. Winter is a break for fleas because the cold weather makes them less active. People in London who survived are starting to come out of their homes where they had been hiding for months. They walk through streets that seem too empty, past houses that will never again echo with the voices of their former residents, through a city that has changed in a big way. The aftermath is almost as bad as the plague itself. A lot of London is just gone. Extended families lost all but one member, trades with no one left who knows them, churches that don't have priests, courts that don't have judges. The loss of so many important people broke the administrative system of medieval society. And every survivor is haunted by a question that will never be fully answered. Why did I live when so many others died? London starts to rebuild, but it's not the same city. The survivors are not only physically scarred, many of them have the scars of buboes that drained and healed. They are also mentally changed. They have seen the complete breakdown of social order, death take everyone regardless of wealth or piety, and learn that neither church, state, nor family could protect them. Some people are very religious and think that God saved them for a reason. Others live life with a desperate intensity, determined to make the most of the time they have left. The lack of workers gives the common people more power, which will lead to the peasants' revolt of 1381. There is more land per person, higher wages, and better living conditions because there are fewer people. As workers gain power, the old feudal system, in which lords could set terms for desperate peasants, falls apart. Parliament tries to pass the Statute of Labourers, which would keep wages at pre-plague levels and stop workers from looking for better jobs. But the law is mostly not enforceable. Too many people have tasted new things and felt new power. The plague comes back in waves. In 1361, another outbreak kills 20% of the people, and then again in the 14th and 15th centuries. Londoners have to deal with the plague coming back over and over again. They know that any year could bring the fever and the buboes, that they always have to be on the lookout, and that they can never be sure they will survive. The Black Death becomes a part of English life for 300 years, until the Great Plague of 1665, which is the last time it is seen in a big way. Today, digs at East Smithfield show the mass graves from 1349, where hundreds of skeletons, men, women and children, were laid out in neat rows. They were all victims of the first terrible outbreak. DNA testing shows that Yersinia pestis is in their bones, which is scientific proof of what medieval records say. These graves are only a small part of London's dead, but they are proof of the worst pandemic in human history before modern medicine. The Black Death changed England and Europe in ways that can still be seen today. It ended the feudal system, gave power to the common people, made the church less powerful when prayers didn't work, sped up the use of everyday languages, and changed the way people thought about society, authority, and their place in the world. The survivors made something new out of the ruins, but they never forgot the year when half of their neighbours disappeared, when death walked the streets of London, and when humanity faced extinction and somehow survived. If you enjoyed this trip back to the worst time in medieval London's history, subscribe to keep exploring history's most important disasters with us. My name is Arthur, and I want to know what other disaster or pandemic I should recreate next. The Antonine Plague in ancient Rome, the Spanish flu in 1918, or maybe the Great Fire of London? Please let me know in the comments.